Ayub had a lot of wealth. Had a lot of kids. My kids. And his health is a physical man. Alhamdulillah. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tried him. First and foremost, the herd was on the move. And a tornado came. We woke up from this surprise and we found all the herd dead. Ayub comes back to the house. He sees his house all the way to the ground. And he realizes his children are in the house. He goes and starts picking up the rubble, trying to find his children, and all his children were killed. And the days pass by and he starts getting weaker and weaker. He gets the virus. His body became small. People left him. Nobody wanted to be with him. And he's with his wife Leah sitting down. And she's narrating the story to us, and we are in utter surprise. The door knocks. Leah gets up and she opens the door. It was the neighbor. She hands her a loaf. She takes the loaf. Leah takes the loaf and comes back to where Ayub is. Ayub took a nap right now. She's toying with the loaf. She hasn't seen one of those, a full one, in a long time. She says, Ayub, Ayub. Ayub wakes up. He takes a look at he sees a loaf. He says, Leah, where did you bring this loaf from? She says, my neighbor just gave it to me. She had her 8-year-old kid. He was hungry, and she knew what affliction you were going through. So she put water in a pot, and she started stirring the pot with a fire underneath it, trying to make the kid believe that there's food waiting for him, so he would fall asleep. And he fell asleep, and she gave us this. Ayub, he says, what? He's asking about the whereabouts of the bread. He's asking, where did you bring this bread from? And he's most in need of this loaf. Leah takes the loaf of bread back to the neighbor. Why? I don't want the child to wake up, not see the loaf of bread. It's an order. Leah gets up, takes the loaf of bread to the neighbor. Neighbor says, what? She says, my husband doesn't want it. And surely enough, the child wakes up. Wakes up crying, but he sees the loaf of bread, takes the loaf of bread, puts it within him, and goes back to sleep. They used to feed their children a loaf of bread. The child would feel the loaf of bread. That was his only toy. Surely enough, after that he would eat his only toy. That is something he got used to. My God, how times are changed. You had neighbors like Ayub who would care about their neighbors' children to the point, give them back the loaf of bread. And only God knows how much recompense Ayub is going to get for that loaf of bread. A man was dying, and on his deathbed they heard him say 3 things. He says, ليته كان كاملا, ليته كان جديدا, ليته كان بعيدا. Meaning, I wish it was complete, full. Then he said, I wish it was far. Then he said, I wish it was new. They rushed to the Holy Prophet. They say, Ya Rasulullah, on his deathbed, this man said these statements, 3 statements. ليته كان كاملا, ليته كان بعيدا, ليته كان جديدا. What does it mean? Rasulullah sallallahu wa sallam alayhi says to this man, to these people, he says, bear in mind that this man, during his lifetime, somebody came, knocked on his door asking him for food. He looks around, he sees half a loaf of bread. He gives it to the needy. And then behind that, Allah shows him as he is dying the rewards for that half of loaf. And he says, my God, if that's the reward, لَيْتَهُ كَانَ كَامِلًا. I wish that loaf of bread was full. Then one time somebody knocked on his door in need of food. He gave him a used piece of clothing. And Allah showed him the rewards. He says, لَيْتَهُ كَانَ جَدِيدًا. I wish that piece of clothing was new. And one time he was walking towards the mosque. He finds a handicapped right on the floor trying to get to the masjid. He carries him on his back a few feet to the masjid. And Allah shows him for every step that he took the rewards. He says, لَيْتَهُ كَانَ بَعِيدًا. I wish the mosque was farther to give me more. Ayyub alayhi salam says, here's your loaf of bread. I wish it was a whole bakery. Ayyub, what made you come out and say, وَاذْكُرْ عَبْدَنَا أَيُّوبَ إِذْ نَادَى رَبَّهُ أَنِّي مَسَّنِيَ الضُّرُّ أَوْ أَنِّي مَسَّنِيَ الشَّيْطَانُ بِنُصْبٍ وَعَذَابٍ? What made you get to this position? Ayyub's wife looks at him and says, أَلَا تَسْأَلَ اللَّهَ الشِّرْكَ. Don't you ask Allah to cure you? He looks at her and says, يَا امْرَأَتِي, how many years have I been living in good health? She says, 70. He says, how many years have I been living in bad health? He says, 18. He says, I'm ashamed of Allah to ask Him for good health if I did not spend the equivalence in bad. I need to wait 52 more years. Otherwise, I am ashamed to do so. Ya Ayyub, what is the worst thing that you went through while you were in this affliction? And you were patient throughout. He says, Shamatatul A'da. The enemies. Itmaskhar. They look at me, they look down upon me. And so I won't allow the enemies to look down upon me. I turn to you, O Allah, and I say to you, وَاذْكُرْ عَبْدَنَا أَيُّوبَ إِذْ نَادَى رَبَّهُ أَنِّي مَسَّنِيَ الشَّيْطَانُ بِنُصْبٍ وَعَذَابٍ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala comes back to him and says, ارقض برجلك هذا مغتسل بارد وشراب. As soon as you give a call out for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the answer comes back immediately. Ya Ayyub's wife leaves, and Ayyub sits down and he does not say, Allah, please give me back my health. He's too ashamed to use that towards Allah, as if he's saying, Allah, you are the one to make the decision for me. If you choose, you see me and you know how I am, what I'm going through, it is your choice. Whenever you want to cure me, then feel free to go ahead and do it. And if you look at the Quranic verse, the Quranic says, إِذْ نَادَى رَبَّهُ, he says, Allah, Ya Allah, أَنِّي مَسَّنِيَ الشَّيْطَانِ. Shaitan has afflicted. He didn't say, Allah, heal me. أَنِّي مَسَّنِيَ الشَّيْطَانُ بِنُصْبٍ وَعَذَابٍ. Look what the shaitan did. The answer came back, Ayyub, ارقض